How do you do, my fellow Americans? The Holy Bible tells of the Hall of Faith in the book of Hebrews, and that Hall of Faith continues on in the annals of American history with faith-filled Christians who embrace their Christian liberty. Join me now in this episode of Stories of Great Patriots. I come to you today and I want to tell you a story of a very special lady. Her name is Miss Julia. Miss Julia was born May 27th, 1819, and she was born to a father that was a prominent banker, a Wall Street banker in New York City. Her mother was somewhat of a poet. She was fourth of seven children in that family, and she was given private tutors, and she was always put in schools, great schools for young ladies until she was 16. And her brother sent her a library of books from Europe, knowing that her sister was a very special lady and she loved to read. And she loved to read books about famous poets, famous writers. And her father knew that about her and saw it fit for her to meet the likes of Longfellow and Charles Dickens and Charles Sumner. And her father died 1839. Her mother had died when she was 5. And it wasn't too long after she found herself in Boston, Massachusetts, and she met a doctor that had founded the Perkins School for the Blind. And within a couple of years, she married this doctor. And together they had 6 children. And while being married, they did a newspaper together. It was called the Commonwealth. It was a newspaper on abolition. And she had a struggle, though. She wanted to write poetry, but her husband wanted her more to take care of those children, and she wanted to get out in society a little bit more. And within 10 years after their marriage, she did write a book. She wrote a book called Passion Flowers, which had been in 1853. And she, 4 years later, wrote a book called Words for the Hour. She loved it. She loved poetry. Her husband was 20 years older than her, and he died in 1876. Now, while her husband and her were involved in abolition, they actually entertained a strong abolitionist, and his name was John Brown. And John Brown had some land where he had a underground railroad. He had a barn where he took care of the slaves. And he would go to auction blocks and he would see what kind of settlers, what kind of people would actually want to enslave human life, and he'd actually kill them, he and his sons. John Brown actually seized the government arsenal at Harper's Ferry, Virginia, and was later captured. And he was hung December 2nd, 1859. And in that era, there was a book that was written about, it was called The Secret Six. And in that book, Miss Julia's husband was found in that book, written about. And he fled for Canada. He didn't know how far this was going to go, being that John Brown was hung. So this is a very shaky time in their marriage. Now, in 1861, her and her husband were invited to come to Washington, D.C. They were invited by President Abraham Lincoln. And what took place at that meeting with Abraham Lincoln while she was there turned out to be one of the pinnacles of her life. Let me tell you a little bit of a story. Let me tell you about a man by the name of William Steffy. William Steffy, this is a little bit of a story inside of a story to set the stage for what I want to share with you. William Steffy collected and edited a song with a traditional chorus which went like this: Glory, hallelujah. And he changed the words to the song to make it a happy song, a campfire song. And it started off by saying, it was sung that was saying, "Say, brothers, will you meet us on Canaan's happy shore?" It was a happy song that you'd like to sing around the campfire. And that was done in 1856. Well, in 1861, when her and her husband were walking about, they noticed the tents and the campfires, and they noticed soldiers, Union soldiers, marching to a song that was the same song but with different words. And the words went something like this: John Brown lies moldering in his grave, but his soul goes marching on. And then glory, hallelujah. And there was a pastor friend there that were with Miss Julie and her husband. His name was Pastor Clark, and he recommended to Miss Julia that maybe she ought to consider changing the words to that song, knowing that she was a very talented songwriter. Now, John Brown, who they were singing about, many thought he was insane. He was a crazy, some call him a heretic. But there were some people that thought he was a hero. There were some people that embraced his cause. There was a Louisa May Alcott. She authored a book called Little Woman, and she called him Saint John the Just. So there were people that thought he was like a saint. Well, when Miss Julia had taken in that day and observed the soldiers and listened to them sing this song in their cadence while marching off to war, she laid down that night in the old Willer Hotel and she contemplated everything that she'd taken in. And when she woke up the next morning, coming out of her sleep, it was like a download from heaven. She was getting words, poetry, in stanzas. And she knew that if she didn't capture it, if she fell back to sleep, she'd forget it. So she got up and grabbed an old stubby pencil, found some paper, and it was still somewhat dark. She could hardly see. And she started writing as fast as she could as she kept getting this download. And when she was done, she laid down, getting ready to close her eyes and fall fast asleep again. She knew that she had written something very special. That what she had written and was applied to the tune of Glory Hallelujah changed her life and made her an overnight celebrity. Well, you know, she died October 17th, 1910. She died in Rhode Island, and her memorial was at Cambridge, Massachusetts. Her name was Miss Julia Ward Howe. And Miss Julia wrote the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And 4,000 people at her memorial sang that song. See you next time, America. Something you might consider, something you might ponder. Maybe the Battle Hymn of the Republic should be our new national anthem.